Okay, first of all, thank you, Dr. Abdelouahad, for being with us. I want to start and just ask you a little bit about the movement that you're a part of, Adwal Ihsan, justice and spirituality in English. And you are the head of the political circle in the movement. Adwal Ihsan, even though it's the largest Islamist movement in Morocco, doesn't get much attention. So can you maybe just start by telling us a little bit about what makes your organization distinctive from other Islamist movements?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. Uh, okay, this is one of the reasons why I went to UK and to do my PhD, really, because this is the problem. The problem is that many scholars and many researchers, when they want to do some research on Islamic movements, they go to the Middle East. And there is some reason for that. Sometimes they think that what goes for the Middle East, for Egypt or Jordan, it goes for Morocco and Algeria, which is not correct. But and there is also one reason. Some people, it's easier, much easier for them to go to Egypt or to go to Jordan because of the question of language. You know that in Morocco and France there is the French language and the Arabic language. So some people find it easier to go there than to go to Morocco. That's why not many English really researchers come to North Africa and do research on the Morocco. That's why I think this is one of the reasons why these movements are not really well researched in the English-speaking academia, really.
And so what would you say then, for people who aren't familiar with the movement, how is it, because you're not a brotherhood type movement. You may be similar in some ways, but you're sort of you're doing your different thing. You have a different kind of history. You had a spiritual leader, Sheikh Ihsane. So how are you distinctive? Maybe just tell us a little bit. What are the main differences?
Yeah, well, I think we have chosen we have to be called by Al-Adl wal-Ihsan, and I think that those two words really sums up our objectives. Okay, by Al-Adl it's translated by justice, and we mean by justice that we want to contribute to the establishment of just political system, just society, etc., etc. And by Ihsan, really there is no, as you know, I'm sure that you know that, there is no accurate, really equivalent in English to translate Al-Ihsan. So for the lack of better equivalent, we have chosen spirituality just to indicate this dimension, the moral and spiritual dimension in our project. And we think that two dimensions are closely related and they cannot be separated. They are very important. Two of them are very important in our project.
Great. And so, in the West, Morocco is often seen as a positive case. And it's actually one of the only countries where there has been a democratically elected Islamist prime minister from the Justice and Development Party, and which is in a way one of your competitor parties. So considering that there is an Islamist prime minister, do you see that as a positive development? And does that suggest that the political system is more open for maybe not your movement, but there's another Islamist party which has done quite well?
I think the issue is not who is leading the government. The issue is, to examine the constitution and to examine, the prerogatives of the government, of the parliament. If you examine the present constitution, really, you will find that the major powers are still in the hands of the kings. And you will find that the government or the parliament, they don't have really the prerogative to function properly. So whether it is an Islamist party or secular party, there is no difference. They will find they cannot do anything. They cannot perform. They cannot fulfill their program. It is impossible because there are certain measures that are taken in order to maintain the dominance of the monarchy. And no party can possibly win the majority. It is impossible. This is calculated, really.
And so in that sense, I think Morocco has a deep state, let's say, which is sometimes referred to as the McCants, and the monarchy sees it as its jurisdiction or domain, religious education, because the king is, according to the constitution, is Amir al-Mu'mineen, which is a religious title, the commander of the faithful. And the McCants also sees its role as providing social services. So that must make it difficult for your movement to act, because you were concerned with justice and spirituality, but the monarchy claims to have a monopoly on providing social justice and providing religious education. So how does that give you much room to operate, and how do you deal with the fact that the king has this domain?
Well, you see, we may have different titles, but the core of the matter is not the question of form. The core of the matter is that we have an authoritarian regime. The rest is that some insignificant things and significant issues. So the real problem is that we are not free. There is no freedom. We are not free to express ourselves. Okay, aren't we entitled to express our ideas? If they are talking about democracy, if they are talking about constitutional monarchy, why shouldn't they let us to speak? And then the people are going to judge. But to use these ideas or in order to repress us or to prevent us from conveying our message, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We are the largest movement. Everybody knows that, the largest movement in Morocco. So we will find many ways in order to talk to people and to convey our ideas. And many people they sympathize with us because they find what's going on and what is really, it is not fine. It is not okay. According to all criteria, according to the Islamic criteria or the democratic or whatever you like, it is not acceptable. It is not acceptable, to just prevent some people to express their ideas.
But one thing here, though, is that the monarchy in Morocco is relatively popular. We can debate
how do we know? We have never held any referendum or something to. They say they are very popular, but how do we know?
But wouldn't it be fair to say, though, that the monarchy enjoys some degree of legitimacy, that maybe not all Moroccans, but many Moroccans see the monarchy as a unifying force in society, a symbol of national unity? So do you feel like there would be enough support ever, even hypothetically, because you support a Republican government, you would rather there not be, how about this? You can.
Okay, we don't. Because I don't like to engage in names, because we have monarchies and we have republicans in the Arab world, and what's the difference? They are all the same. So, we have to talk about the content. Give me a system of rule where people are free to choose their leader, where their ruler, where people are free to choose their representative, where you have separation of powers, where you have, etc., all those items, and then call that system whatever you like. Because when you wear a good name doesn't make a bad system good, and vice versa. So we have to concentrate on the core of the, because the moment you say want republic, look, he wants republic, he's against the monarchy, etc., etc. Right. And you remember Nadia Yassin sometime long ago, she talked about the republic, and there was such a row, such a fuss. Why did she want? She used the word republic. So the question is not of names. The question is content.
But if it's about content rather than form, then wouldn't it then make sense to have a gradualist approach, maybe enter the political process, contest elections with the hope that over time the monarchy will give more space for elected politicians? These things don't happen overnight. If we look at the evolution of constitutional monarchy in Europe, there was a lot of push and pull. So why not be a force in the political process, and maybe you can help push it in a more positive direction?
Yeah, that's a good question. So sometimes people think that we are hasty and we want to change things overnight. Now, that's not the reality. We know there are many problems, and these problems are not just they are there for many years, for many decades, but for many centuries. So they cannot be, they cannot be solved overnight. And we know, so we cannot, our modus operandi, it cannot be reduced just to everything or nothing. So we know that we should be gradualist. But the problem is that we should have a good beginning. This is our demand. We should have a clear agenda, a good beginning, and a common platform. And then we have to take our time. It is impossible to change the system, to change what we have in our society overnight. I agree with you.
My last question before I'll give it to Will. There's a lot more awareness about the Muslim Brotherhood and Brotherhood-inspired movements, and there's a lot of talk about how the Brotherhood views Tatbiq al-Sharia, or the implementation of Islamic law. How do they really feel about Sharia? What are their ultimate goals? Could you just maybe very briefly tell us, how does Adl al-Ihsan differ, if at all, from the Brotherhood when it comes to the role of Sharia in public and political life?
Well, I think when we have to talk about, we cannot deal about everything at the same time. We have to set some priorities. And I think the most important priority for the time being is to talk about transition period. We feel that we are not alone in society. We are just one component among others, and so we have to discuss with other people. And this is our demand. We want to be free so that people are free to talk and to discuss, and then let the system come or be the outcome of discussion, and not impose anything on people. So it's finished. Experience shows that you cannot impose anything on people. So let the system that you want come from the discussion of the people, and the majority decides.
Great. Dr. Abdelouahad, there have been a lot of changes over the last 5 years in North Africa and the Middle East. Do you think Ihsan has missed any important opportunities? If you could go back 5 years and recommend a change, is there one you would recommend? And you personally, have you changed any of your ideas about politics and Islam?
Well, I think maybe what distinguishes Ihsan from other Islamic movements in Morocco, just to talk about Morocco, which I know better, is that you have already a certain, vision there before the beginning. And so people gather around that vision. So that vision is there, and there is a certain strategy, and it is published. And that's why we are not really, there are many ideas that we used to talk about, and with many people, many diplomats, with many journalists, so they are there, and we still talk about them. So we used to talk about it is impossible for any one party, to undertake the required reform in our country. So we used to talk about the collective approach. We should gather together, and that's why we on many occasions we talked about the pact. We talked about pact transition. In Morocco, we think that the first step and the first thing should be a pact. We mean by pact that all the parties, without exception, all the parties, civil society, activists, and influential personnel should come together to discuss. This is our country. There are different ideas. There are different concepts, and so how can we talk together in order to avoid civil war So this is because this for us civil war is the red line. So we cannot do it. So that's why Sheikh Ihsane used to say, between these two limits, we should invest our effort in order to invest something. We don't want to be put in the government or in the parliament to be given small corner and to be just the facade. We want, and the main decision are going to be taken by the power. We will never accept that. And the other limit is we will never go as far as pushing our country into civil war. We will not do it. And that's why this is one of the reasons, at one moment, when the Arab Spring, when we took to the streets, so we participated and we were the major component of that movement. Everybody knows that. But at one moment, we saw that it doesn't work. So we withdraw. And the whole movement collapsed. Because we saw, if we are to push further, it's not going to achieve the requirement that we are all looking for.
It doesn't seem like a positive thing that you said that you withdrew from the movement and then the movement for political reform or change collapsed. Yeah. How is that a positive thing that you lost momentum for pushing changes?
Because at one moment, at the time I was in UK, I was following. At one moment, many people started to talk, we don't know why, to talk about Ihsan. It's going to dominate, it's going to do something, it's going to, and many ideas, many charges, many accusations started to talk. So how can you work together when you find that those people with whom you are working, they are making so many accusations against you? So you have to stop there. So we have to decide before we engage in any movement, we have to talk first in order to be clear what we are going to do in the future.
You got a PhD from Exeter, and you were around a lot of academics who study political Islam and Islamist movements. What is it, have you seen anything that they get wrong constantly? Is there some mistake that outside researchers always make about Islamist movements?
That's a very good question. and that's really, because this is the problem. Another reason why I went to do some research, because I gave so many interviews. And sometimes I find that there are not some deep questions really. And it's okay. You can understand that. And so I find that we have to give, to look to the phenomenon from another perspective, and especially from the inside perspective, and especially when you are, one foot here and one foot in activism and one foot in little bit academic work. So I think that certain balance, it gives you the chance and the opportunity to deal with the subject. You are in better. So I think I was in better position to deal with the subject because I studied Arabic. I know Arabic well. I study Islamic sciences. I study the Quran. I know the Quran by heart, etc., etc. And that gives me a chance and a better position in order to tackle the subject.
What do you think, at least about Ihsan? What is it you think you saw better than an outsider would see? Does it have to do with matters of faith, or is it just because you're much more familiar with the organization and the literature that you were able to derive some specific important insight that an outsider wouldn't?
Okay, just to tell you an example. For example, one researcher, he was talking about Sheikh Ihsane, about his letter, the letter which he sent to King Hassan, to the last king. And she was translating some passages. And in one of the passages, he said, in the passage it says, أيها الملك المبتلى بالجلوس على عرشه المبتلى. She translated that word, tired from occupying the throne of his ancestors. Have you ever seen a monarch tired of occupying the throne of his? And this is well known research. I don't going to say its name, her name now. Yeah, but But when you are a researcher, when you find that sentence, you stop. There is something wrong about it. You can't accept that sentence. There is something that's not wrong. But now, she continued and she built on it her analysis and she continued to draw some lessons. But does it make sense really that? So these are some of the things, and that's why I find a researcher in UK and he said, well, to know the Arabic language is decisive really in order to get to the core of the subject.
Right. I have a final question, and it has to do with the caliphate. It's a word.
The caliphate.
Right. It's a word that's circulating a lot in Western media. It's because ISIS has brought it to everyone's attention. They have proclaimed themselves to be the caliphate. We know that most Muslims reject it, but it's a very potent symbol. The title claimed by the king of Morocco is Commander of the Faithful. It's the same title that's claimed by the head of ISIS. What is it that outsiders, and particularly Westerners, need to understand about the caliphate? Why is this institution important for Sunni Muslims? And do you think it's really important for Muslims today, or is it just a far-off dream that doesn't really have anything to do with contemporary politics?
You see, when we use caliphate, we usually refer to the Khilafah al-Rashida. I mean, which lasted 30 years after the Prophet. 30 years.
Right, the first caliphate.
That's the first. After that, this is the point that we focus on. After that, and this is something that the monarchy doesn't like. After that, you have monarchy, you have despotic rule. And they don't want that. They don't want. So sometimes you find the term of the caliphate by the Umayyad or the Abbasid, but that's not right. You find in the saying of the Prophet, there is a saying of the which says, it is not a caliphate. And what distinguishes the first caliphate against the other? You have the question of hereditary, you have this question of authoritarian, etc., etc. That's why people, when you see, you are talking to some people. Sometimes when you use, I'm talking to my people. When I use some words, they understand me immediately. But, for example, what happens to the left in our countries? They use some terms and words. People don't understand. They are talking about the proletariat and about certain like what. So they don't understand them. So this is the problem. Okay, that said, I don't think we shouldn't make fuss about terms. Again, I am always sensitive about using words because this question of terms, anybody can take any term and can give it the meaning he likes. So I think we should talk about the content. That is what is, as I said, that is what is important for me. So if it means that our people are free to choose the ruler, that's okay, that's fine. If it means that we will have justice, it means that we have separation of, that's okay. If it's going to mean an authoritarian regime like the Abbasid or whatever, or like this dreadful image of Daesh, no, we say no.
What if it means going beyond the nation state to have some kind of confederation where there is more unity among Muslims? Is that something that Muslims should still aspire to from your standpoint and the movement standpoint? It's not realistic now, but what about in 30 years, 50 years, 100?
I think it's only legitimate that we should come together. This is done by other countries, and why shouldn't we think about it? Why shouldn't we talk about it? But the idea is it should come from bottom up, not imposed by us. If the people want it, why not?
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was great. Yeah.
Yep.